on behalf of IMC Young Leaders Forum, Yunus Social Business, and BMW Foundation, welcome you to this conversation on the power of the 98%. This is looking beyond CSR, hence today's conversation is not going to be about CSR. We are going to be talking about how to leverage the core capabilities, the 98% of our bottom line, to solve for the urgent social and environmental problems. I'm Rahul, and I'm on the advisory board of YSB India, and I'm one of the authors of the report on research on Indian companies' social entrepreneurship initiatives, what we have called as the power of 98%. With that, let me invite Mr. Anand Singhania, President of Indian Merchants Chamber, one of the oldest network for corporations in India. We are delighted to have this platform, sir, for this important conversation. Anand, we would be grateful if you start off this interesting afternoon with a few words.
Thank you so much, Rahul. I appreciate that. A very good afternoon, everyone, and heartiest greetings from the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As I was mentioning a while ago, the Chamber is a very old organization. It's 115 years young, and I'm very happy to have this event. You know, it's probably taken us a while to focus on the 98%, but it's important to go away from just the 2%, which is mandatory. So first of all, I'd like to compliment the YLF committee, the IMC's Youth Leadership Forum, the Yunus Social Business, and the BMW Foundation for jointly organizing today's program on the very important aspect of social engagement by the corporate houses. That is the importance not only of the CSR for sustainable growth, but the 98%. Basically, the entire business outlook has to look at the interests of all the stakeholders. A bit about CSR. CSR has been so far the effective tool to work in line of the Sustainable Development Goals with a strong focus on social performance as per the projects taken up by various organizations. The CSR has become the new normal for Indian organizations. Larger corporations understand that CSR is an integral part of the business framework for sustainable development. Companies, erstwhile, have also considered the approach towards a socially profitable approach towards sustainable development and focus on the triple bottom line approach of the economic, environment, and social performance. We all know large funds are deployed and time and energy is spent on CSR activities across the country. A scientific system to evaluate the effectiveness of CSR activities and their positive outcomes on stakeholders have led to an immense value to maximize welfare gains and minimize social and economic costs. But the question is this enough? Is this going to make an impact? Is it only featuring certain defined objectives? Can we not expand our working into other areas, into how to use our entire business outlook towards meeting the requirements of both the urban and the rural? Countries like India have an annual funding gap of over $3 trillion, which is needed in order to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. This is too large to be met through philanthropy and it needs tapping into the billions of dollars invested into commercial markets globally. Corporate India contributed over $1.3 billion towards the SDG funding gap in 2021, though through its mandated 2% of CSR contribution. However, there's a tremendous potential to look beyond the CSR funds towards the capabilities, networks, talent, and resources that lie in corporate India's core capabilities, that is 98%, to create business solutions to meet India's social and environmental challenges. And why do we say India alone? We can actually look at these models to go worldwide, globally. I believe developing key performance indicators is the first step. Needless to add, we can improve only if we are able to measure. Such measurement will bring about more meaningful insights into our activities and help optimize these activities. In other words, maximizing the impact of outcomes and minimizing the expenditure of money, men, and material. Now, more than ever, as our world and lives have changed in the light of 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is essential that we prioritize and foster social change and innovation. Maybe with proper insight, regulation, and standardization, harnessing the power of 98% can become the most powerful tool for societal improvement. The worlds of philanthropy and businesses are in the midst of a once-in-a-lifetime paradigm shift. There's an exciting emergence of the phenomena called social entrepreneurship that has the potential to tap into corporate India's talent and resources to address major social and environmental problems at scale, while also being an innovation engine for business to compete successfully in the current age of the fourth industrial revolution. Today, we have assembled a very highly erudite team of experts for this program who will bring better and deeper insights into this subject. A very warm welcome and special thanks to our speakers. We have Ms. Aarti Vig, Future Thinking and Research from Unis Social Business. We have Ms. Nairika Holkar, the ED from Godrej Boyce Manufacturing Company. Mr. Shankar Venkateshwaran, Operating and Head ESG, eCube Investments Advisors Private Limited. We have Mr. Jayant Bhuvargan, Senior Advisor and Coach, Essilor Luxottica. Mr. Kedar Lele, ED of the Customer Development at Unilever. We have Mr. Rahul Batra, Advisor of Unis Social Business India, and he's going to talk about the book and the research that they've done. And we have Ms. Barbara Muller from the BMW Foundation, Herbert Quant. I really look forward to a very interesting afternoon on this very important topic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit about the IMC. The IMC, as you know, it's a premier chamber of commerce, which has a rich legacy of 100 years with an excellent service to trade, industry, and commerce. We have a membership base of about 5,000 members, and we have associate members, about 150 associations. Collectively, we reach out to a group of almost 400,000 businesses, which is a very large reach. And the IMC has 22 expert committees. One of them is the Youth Leaders Forum. And through these committees, we are a platform to look at what are the changes that are required, a platform for ideating, a platform for bringing up issues that need to be raised, and making various policy inputs, both at the state and at the center. And we continuously work with the policymakers to effect change. The IMC organizes interactive dialogues like this, workshops, seminars, conferences. We do industrial visits. We engage with leaders to form a conducive opinion for growth, not only which has to be sustainable and for the growth of India. With this, I'd like to welcome you all for this wonderful session, and thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Anand. So corporate entrepreneurship is something on which BMW Foundation has been creating an ecosystem around the world. And we at YSB are very delighted to partner with them on this report. So I'll give you a sneak preview of this report, but let me request Barbara Muller, who leads this work in India, to please say a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you also, Anand, for kicking us off here so powerfully. It is with great pleasure that I welcome everyone here to this meeting. I'm very much looking forward to the next hour or so, to what our amazing speakers have to say on the topic of corporate social entrepreneurship. It is a topic that fascinates me personally, and it's a topic that we as organization strive to advance since a couple of years, and we are very happy to see that it is slowly gaining more public attention and interest. Allow me to very briefly introduce myself. My name is Barbara Müller. I'm based in Berlin, but I have the privilege to spend some of my time in India as well. I'm with BMW Foundation Herbert Quandt. It's a corporate foundation of BMW that is active worldwide. My focus and responsibility then again is on India and Asia. The vision of our foundation is a new inclusive leadership paradigm where leaders across the world enable the transformation towards a peaceful, just, and regenerative future. In 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals gave us a comprehensive plan for a sustainable world by 2030. The goals cover a wide range of issues. There's a vision of what needs to happen, but frankly, progress along this vision has so far been slow and somewhat disappointing. We seem to lack the inner capacity to deal with our increasingly complex environment and challenges. And this is why we, the BMW Foundation, support leaders to develop precisely this inner capacity. What do we mean by that? It is, for example, the capacity to deeply feel a sense of responsibility and commitment to values and purposes relating to the good of the whole. It is the capacity to feeling as part of a community, as part of humanity, as part of a global ecosystem. And of course, it's a skill and motivation to build and facilitate relationship with diverse stakeholders, and the skills to mobilizing others to engage in shared purposes. I'm very excited to see if our panel will share or challenge this view. But I think that these are also the skills that will help us as a society to achieve what we have described in our report on corporate social entrepreneurship. We need to tap into the core capabilities of business to solve the urgent societal and environmental challenges of our times. As I mentioned earlier, our foundation has been supporting the movement of social entrepreneurship in different world regions since a little while, but of course, the requirements and implementations are very different globally. So finding out what the conditions for success are in India has driven us to work on this report with UNO Social Business. And I'm very proud that we can present this report and some of our insights here today. Let me stop here, but not without first thanking those who offered us this opportunity. This is, of course, IMC, and in particular, Anand and Shloka Nath. And let me also express my deep gratitude towards UNO Social Business, in particular, Ativik and Rahul Batra. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara, for your partnership. Now I'm calling on my colleague, Garthi, to kick us off into the discussion.
Thanks, Rahul. Can everyone see my screen? Rahul, maybe you can tell me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon. As someone pointed out, so several people pointed out, we're competing for your attention with a very important cricket match. So we're very grateful that you've joined us today. So I'm Aarti, and I see a lot of familiar faces here. So welcome to them, and lovely to see you again. For those who don't know me, I currently lead thought leadership and research at an organization called UNO Social Business, where I previously also co-founded and led the India arm. So just a little bit about us. Who are we? We are an organization co-founded by Mohammed Yunus, this person on your screen, to accelerate the development of business models, but with a difference, business models to address poverty around the world. For those of you who don't know who Mohammed Yunus is, he is called the father of microfinance. He created something called Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is a bank that lends only to poor and illiterate women, basically women that were that regular banks would not lend to. So over 30 years since the bank's been around, it has spread as a model around the world, brought about 100 million people out of poverty. And it has also been an incredibly successful business model, having given billions of dollars in loans to these women, and with a 99% repayment rate. So it's proven that it is possible to create very successful models that both create impact and also are successful on traditional business parameters. So for this work, both Yunus and Grameen Bank were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. So we, as Yunus Social Business, follow his basic philosophy, which is the idea that business can be a very powerful creative force to solve human problems. And we do that in two ways. The first is we support small social business entrepreneurs to scale by giving them low-cost loans and non-financial support. That's our funds business. And then we also have our corporate social innovation arm, where we work with large corporations like Danone, Airbus, IKEA. In India, we work with SEAT, with Tata Steel, with Siemens Healthineers, and many others. And in each of these cases, what we do is we co-create solutions to environmental and social problems that leverage the companies, not their CSR, but their core capabilities. Over the last 10 years, we've worked with over 40 corporate partners. We've created about 100,000 jobs through 2,000 social entrepreneurs, and we've spread our work across about 12 regions. Now, about 3 years ago, after doing several projects with corporates, we set up something called a future thinking research unit, where basically we create tools, frameworks, and reports around this topic of business as unusual. Business, not just to maximize profit, but business to solve human problems. And we have several reports that are on our website, and we've done this together with partners like the BMW Foundation, INSEAD, Porticus, and the Schwab Foundation of the World Economic Forum. So today, we'll be giving you a sneak preview of one of these reports created with the BMW Foundation, where we look at how we can unleash the creative power of corporate India's core business. It's 98%, as Anand said, not its 2%, to solve for urgent problems like waste, access to health, enhancing farmer incomes. And to set a little bit of context that Anand's already spoken about, countries like India need up to $3 trillion annually to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Obviously, this amount of money cannot come from traditional sources like philanthropic money or government spending or international aid, because it just simply isn't enough. So this means that we have to tap into the hundreds of trillions that are sitting in commercial markets. Now, how do we do this? We can divert actual money into the SDGs, actual cash, towards spending on SDGs. Or we can look at where this money is currently invested, basically in companies, and tap into their core capabilities, into their business acumen, their supply chains, their people, their products, their innovation ability, and point all of this in the direction of these problems. Now, an obvious way to tap into companies is to look at their CSR, but as we've said, it's only 2% of their capabilities, and it's fundamentally not where the creative power of business lies. It lies in their core business. Now, we're not being unrealistic here. There are some problems that business cannot solve and should not solve, but there are many that it can. And UNDP and NITI Aayog came together a few years ago to unpack the business opportunities that are hidden in SDGs. For example, let's look at healthcare. We know that there is a huge access and supply issue. We have 9 doctors and 5 beds for every 10,000 people, and our rural poor have to travel on average 15 kilometers to reach a hospital. Now, the flip side of this is a market opportunity, a $350 billion market opportunity. Now, some of that is obviously purely focused on profit maximization, but some of it can be tapped into with different kinds of models that focus on serving the underserved with a different business logic, not profit maximization, but being self-sustaining and having a really long-term view to creating value for business and people. And, we all know the impact investing sector in India. It's very fast growing, and it has grown on exactly this logic. So what we're fundamentally asking through this conversation is, why can't these models come out of large companies as well? Now, there are many inspiring examples where this is happening, led by entrepreneurial employees inside companies that we're calling intrapreneurs. So not entrepreneurs, but intrapreneurs. So a social entrepreneur is fundamentally an entrepreneurial employee who leverages the company's core capability to create a profitable business model, product, or service that creates value for both society and the business. Now, at this point, you might be a little bit confused. It sounds like either I'm talking about regular business or I'm talking about CSR. Our mind wants to go into silos that we're comfortable naming, but these are models that actually sit somewhere in between CSR and regular business. The trigger is usually a desire to solve a social problem with the goal of being self-sustainable in the medium term and creating business value in the long term. These initiatives can take various forms. They can be a division of a company. They can be a separate for-profit legal entity. They can be a sustainable project that sits within a CSR, within the CSR division. But what they have in common is that they are a business solution. They generate revenues to cover costs and are linked to the core business. And with this, I hand over to Rahul, who is the main author of the report, to take us through some highlights.
Thank you, Aarti. So social entrepreneurship, or SI, as we call it in short, how's that even possible? How have companies done it while facing competing business priorities? Let's look at some real examples. So we are showing you here some examples of companies solving for construction-based, low farmer incomes, female unemployment, and access to healthcare, leveraging their core. Now, we all know that 85% of India's farmers are smallholder farmers, and about 22% of farm households live below the poverty line. Enhancing farmer incomes requires advanced farming practices such as mechanization, precision farming. To address this problem, Mahindra, who has been in the agri markets for decades selling tractors, has developed a social innovation approach to reach small farmers, or what we call as smallholders. It works with the farmers over small plots in their neighborhoods called the technique plots to demonstrate the results of their input practices, such as precision farming. As a follow-up service, Krishi E, a new business division, offers end-to-end farm input services on a phygital platform, a combination of stores and a mobile app. Construction waste is the second largest contributor to waste after organic waste, and India only recycles about 1% of it. However, developing a circular economy model for construction waste is not easy. But Godrej & Boyce has taken this challenge up and is recycling waste concrete into structural products like blocks and pavers. Developing a market for these products requires patient investing in prototypes and creating an enabling ecosystem. Godrej RCM, or Recycled Construction Materials, has been set up as a division within Godrej Construction that focuses only on these products and works on public infrastructure projects. Delivering public or private health, the previous slide. Delivering public or private health systems in rural India has been a big problem due to acute shortage of doctors and nurses, or lack of profitable business models as well there. Apollo Telemedicine has shown how partnering with government and leveraging their core of operating hospitals in urban areas can allow them to offer primary and secondary care over telehealth, right? So they've been successful in making telehealth work within the primary healthcare centers. Rural women are, although they are more employed than those in urban, given agri and allied sectors, but access to dignified or formal work is a big social problem. HUS Shakti, which has been immortalized in C.K. Prahlad's Fortune at the business bottom of the pyramid, has shown how rural distribution that engages women can address this big social problem. It also offers synergies with HUL's main business and contributes significantly to company's top line. Also interesting is IKEA's sourcing from organizations like Rangsutra in India, a rural artisan-based enterprise, setting an example of how large companies can procure from smaller and grassroots organizations successfully for their market-facing businesses. Now, these are only a few examples from 10 full case studies that were researched in this report that you will receive a copy of soon. What was the motivation of these companies to take the difficult path of social entrepreneurship? Our global research report, Business as Unusual, that has a wider universe of 50 such examples, points to some fundamental organization-wide benefits, such as motivating talent. Especially in terms of talent engagement, attracting and retaining talent today requires competing with startup ecosystem. Millennials are famously values-driven. An SI initiative mimics an impact startup inside a large company, making it a powerful HR story and also a fantastic training ground for future leaders. As we saw, SDGs represent massive market opportunities as well. SIs can be a long gestation tool to understand future new markets and develop brands and relationships within them. For example, distribution in small villages opened up for HUL with Shakti. SI initiatives become incubators for innovation that spills over into the main business. For example, ITZ's eChopal's experiments in developing the network of farmers has enabled procurement for its major brands such as Ashirwad Atta. Finally, improving corporate brand equity with key customers and other stakeholders. For example, a large retailer engaging in social procurement found that customers that were aware of the social procurement initiative were over 80% more likely to buy from the company than those who weren't, leading to a clear impact of the SI on the company's top line. Now let's assume at this point that you're hooked and want to create this in your own company. Here's why our research is relevant to you. We realized that what we are describing is not a new phenomenon in India. As we said, several case studies like ITC eChopal, HUL Shakti have been immortalized in business school case studies. However, despite their proven potential for impact and spillover benefits to the business, we only have a few of these examples, handful. Why shouldn't the SI ecosystem in India mimic the vibrant impact investing ecosystem? We wanted to understand this. And that's why we took the approach of looking at not the business models, but at the internal journey from the ideation to scale within the company to understand what works and what doesn't. And here is what we found out. First of all, we found out that 65% of the barriers to SI creation are internal ones. The biggest barrier is the corporate immune system that is designed to destroy anything that is not purely focused on profit maximization. Here's how successful entrepreneurs overcame the corporate immune system. CEO buying is the #1 predictor of success. In fact, in the Indian context, it's not just CEO buying, but initiatives are mostly CEO-led or driven. Why? Because SI initiatives, by their nature, cut across traditional silos, requiring senior sponsorship that has the ability to cut silos. Also, it requires strategic vision that is oriented on the long term and is not a victim of quarterly results. As you can imagine, SIs have all the challenges of regular business, and more so, it's fraught with unproven markets, limited willingness to pay, etc. of the customer. That is why they tend to be fantastic training grounds for future leaders. For this reason, you need to incentivize your best people at the leadership level of these initiatives. These businesses are also evaluated, wherever they're successful, they're evaluated on impact metrics such as lives saved, carbon emissions offset, and jobs created, alongside the self-sustainability targets. Leaders also commit significant capital to these initiatives and evaluate these over a multi-year horizon rather than the short-term targets. Social entrepreneur teams communicate their stories very well within the company and create champions. We know that social initiatives are leadership-led. Companies that are successful in it, their leaders allow a broad-based innovation approach, which requires several ideas to bloom, several prototypes to be tested, and mistakes to be made. The organizations that continue to innovate socially over a long time horizon and horizontally get it right. So hopefully, by now, you have a conceptual understanding of how companies have harnessed the power of their core business to solve problems that were never thought of as business problems. Now we should go from theory to reality. So I'm handing over to my colleague Aarti to take us into the next segment, which is a conversation with some leaders who've actually walked the talk.
Thanks, Rahul. Before we jump into the panel, I just want to again say a huge welcome to our audience, the ones that are not watching the cricket match. and also and also to our panelists, who are all very successful business leaders who have pioneered in their organizations, past and present, a little bit of business as unusual. So let me introduce them one by one. And Anita, if we could please spotlight them as I introduce them. Welcome Shankar Venkateswaran. He's built a career at the intersection of business and society, spanning 4 decades. Most recently, he was previously head of sustainability at Tata Sons and is currently head of ESG at eCube Investment Advisors that focuses on ESG stewardship and investing. Welcome, Shankar. Welcome, Nairika. Nairika is executive director of Godrej & Boyce. She leads digital strategy, brand, legal, and M&A for Godrej & Boyce and its subsidiaries. She's also the brand custodian, working very closely with their sustainability, marketing, and comms teams to build a responsible corporate brand. And she's also chair of the CSR committee, working across education, skilling, and conservation. Welcome, Nairika. Welcome, Jayant. Jayant was most recently, he has a very interesting title. He was the Chief Mission Officer, the first such in a global MNC. At Essilor, now Essilor Luxottica, where he is credited with a lot of firsts, including the building out of Essilor iMitra, which is Essilor's flagship inclusive business aimed at bringing vision care to 2.5 billion people across the world who have corrective vision disorders. He currently also works closely with boards, CEOs, and top executives to mentor their organizations into discovering their purpose. Very nice to have you here, Jayant. And finally, last but not least, welcome Kedar. Kedar is currently Executive Director, Customer Development at Hindustan Unilever. He was previously Chairman and MD of Unilever Bangladesh. So, I think he's also worked with Professor Yunus there or interacted with him. He joined Unilever straight out of his MBA, I believe, and has 2 decades of experience across general management, sales, marketing, and digital. And of course, one of the initiatives under his umbrella is the iconic Project Shakti, which, as Rahul mentioned, has been immortalized in C.K. Prahlad's Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. So welcome and absolute pleasure to have you all here. Is it possible to spotlight everyone at the same time? All the panelists? Okay, great. While we're working on that, Shankar, let me turn to you to kick us off with some context setting. So in the last decade, we've hit globally multiple environmental and social tipping points. According to the 2022 Edelman Trust Barometer, where they survey countries around the world on how much they trust stakeholders and what they're concerned about, what we're hearing is that societal fears are on the rise, especially jobs loss, climate change, income inequality, and discrimination. And in their ability to solve these issues, strangely enough, business out of government, media, and civil society is the most trusted institution, even in India. So that means that stakeholders want more action from business leaders on these topics of climate change, economic inequality, workforce reskilling. So in that sense, that old idea of the purpose of business is simply to make profit is changing, or at least stakeholders seem to want it to change. On the funding side, as we already mentioned, we also have the more practical question of needing to plug that gap of 3 trillion annually to achieve the SDGs. So in this scenario, given the increased stakeholder expectations of business and the urgency of diverting resources to this needed change, what do you see as the role of business in society today? How does it positively contribute?
Yeah, thanks, Aarti, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this event. Really looking forward to hearing from the other speakers. To your question, which of course, is a very easy question to ask, but an almost impossible one to answer. But let me just try and make some headway in trying to respond to that. So I often think of it as that the role of business, in a sense, is sort of defined by the social contract between business and society, right? So, so the social contract is something like, you business provide us, as society, with goods and services that we need to fulfill some of our needs, and we allow you to run your business, make a profit, because profit is the cost of staying in business, and we will, that's the essence of the social contract. What of course has happened along the way is the unsaid parts of the social contract, that you will make profits, but not at the cost of society and environment. Unfortunately, some of those limits have been crossed, which is why we find ourselves in this situation, which is why we find society and the planet striking back, as it were, and on all of us, and saying we need to behave. So when you think of it from that context, which is the reason why sustainability, ESG, call it by whatever term you might want, is just not fashionable. It's an inevitable consequence of where we are, and how businesses need to take their role more seriously to work within those boundaries. And so the answers obviously lie there. I think the theme of today's event is very evocative, because it's the 98% actually that matters. The 2%, if you do the 98% right, the 2% really is not even required, I would argue. So what can businesses do? One is clearly in the way they run their current businesses. They need to be very conscious and responsible in the way they do that. In fact, if they just do that, you got 98% of the battle won, as it was. So what does responsible mean? It just means, at the very basic minimum, to do no harm. To do no harm to society, to do no harm to the planet. Let's also be very clear that when we are harming the planet, we're just harming ourselves. So it's all back to that same space of society. So that's really the first thing that companies must do, which is the core of being responsible. The second is, again, what you've been talking about in this report up until now, which is how can you produce goods and services that solve for those problems. So starting from do no harm to actually doing good. And I think there are examples, some of them you've talked about, but businesses can find the way, and therefore businesses, there is money to be made. In other words, there is a business case to solve for societal problems. In fact, when we were speaking the other day, I was mentioning about the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, and the report that they produced, it's slightly old now, 5 years old. It's called Better Business, Better World, where they actually, it's a global report, and there's an India version where they actually identified business opportunities that are aimed at solving for SDGs, but actually you can create businesses out of that. So there is enough and more information. You talked about your UNDP Niti Aayog study. So that's the second thing that businesses need to do. That there is business, there is I don't think businesses anymore think about profit maximization, because that sort of implies profit at any cost. I don't think that's no longer the mantra, certainly not for all the companies represented in this panel right now. And so it's about saying, how can we still make this make profits, be responsible, and solve for problems? And I think that is the path that has to be taken by more and more businesses, not just the few, some of whom are represented on this panel. So I'll stop there, but happy to take this conversation forward.
Yeah, sorry, it was not allowing me to unmute. Thank you, Shankar, for laying that out so beautifully. So the social contract, in a sense, has been broken, but there is an urgency and also a win-win case, where what is good for business, what is good for society is good for business. Beautiful. So we're also talking in the context of that about social entrepreneurship. Now, Shankar, when putting on your Tata hat, you were involved in so many of these kind of initiatives there. You still sit on the board of several of these initiatives. Could you tell us about could you just tell us about what was any one of them, and what what was that journey like? Why did it get created? And what what was were there any spillover benefits? We talk about spillover benefits. Why did it get created? Why did it sustain?
Right. So as you would imagine, there are several such examples in the Tata Group, and it's now been 5 years since I've left, so I'm kind of a little dated. But I know of several such examples, whether it's Titan, whether it's Tata Steel, whether it is TCS, Tata Tele, Steel you're working with. So there are several such examples in different ways. And I'm not talking about CSR, I'm talking about things that are related to business, including, something as strange, you might say, as Titan setting up Karigar parks where goldsmiths can work in very clean conditions and provide quality products to Titan in their gold business. But the other one, which is interesting, which I think might be worth talking about, is Tata Sampann, which is a Tata Chemicals initiative. And what is interesting about it is, again, its origins. What was it trying to solve for? It was actually trying to solve for two kinds of problems. One was, it was trying to solve for saying that there's a national nutrition shortage, where proteins are what we are lacking, and we don't produce enough proteins, and being a largely vegetarian country, pulses are the big source of protein. So there was a pulses mission. So how could a company like Tata Chemicals play into that? And that was sort of one attempt at trying to solve for the protein problem. But at the same time, because Tata Chemicals was in the agri-chemical business, it also a sort of a objective was, how do we increase income for farmers? So it was trying to solve for both these problems and trying to create a business. So that's the origins, in fact, of Tata Sampann. So it started with just creating dals of different kinds, unpolished, because unpolished meant more nutrition, and helping, advising farmers on how to increase production of pulses, and also therefore helping them to then market it through the branding exercise. So that's the sort of, and then it extended into different innovations. It extended into working with certain commodities that were subjected to adulteration, like besan, for example. Also creating variations of that, like a low oil absorbing besan, so you can still have your pakoras, but you don't have to. You get more nutrition out of it than you would otherwise do. So there was innovation, there was brand building, there was trying to solve for the pulses shortage and nutrition, and solve for the farmers' issue. And I think the way it was done was basically creating what you would call an entrepreneurial group within the company. The only other product that company was actually selling to a similar distribution channel was salt, which had a legacy as to why Tata Chemicals is producing salt. But it played into that space, but needed to create a completely separate unit that could look after this. So that was the entrepreneurial element in that, and that's the group that worked with the whole process, right from sourcing it till creating a brand, extending the product, and getting it out there. So the brand still exists. I don't know how well it is doing financially, but the fact that it still exists means that it's sort of still relevant. It's of course moved from Tata Chemicals to Tata Consumer, and that's part of the restructuring. But it still continues. The brand is still available, and I still consume it for whatever it's worth. So that's an example of how these things happen. And obviously, you get the best corporate marketing people, procurement people, and so on into a team to make something like this work. And I think it also feeds into one of the observations of your study, where there is tone from the top is important. It was something that came from very senior people within the group saying, let's try and solve for this problem, and how it sort of panned out. So that's an example, if you like, of this.
Thank you. Can I just request the tech team to just allow everyone to unmute on their own? Thank you. Thanks, Shankar, for that. What a beautiful story, and so interesting that it came out of Tata Chemicals, but in a way, such an iconic Tata story also. Okay, so let me turn. I mean, there's so many questions, but I know we're running a little bit late, so let me turn to Nairika. Nairika, now you are a next gen leader in a group that also has a very old legacy of contributing to society. Does giving back to society today mean something different from what it has for the group in the past? Have you inherited something of, a different world?
Yeah, thanks, Aarti. Thanks for having me on the panel. I definitely think there has been a change, just looking back in terms of, how maybe my great-grandfather thought about community and philanthropy at the time when, the Vikhroli factory was set up. I think at that time it was very focused on, what are the welfare gaps in the community, and, how do we really make the standard of living, quality of life better for, all the areas where we are operating. And I think today the model is very different in the sense that because of things like climate change and, externalities that don't really have boundaries, I think, the whole paradigm has changed in a way. And I think it's moved more to an empowerment model. How do we really look at communities beyond maybe where we are operating today, whether it's skilling, whether it's, education of women, also in terms of the whole, even if I were to give an example of, say, the mangroves, for instance, which is something that that the family has been very actively involved in championing over the decades, and it's 5 times more effective at sequestering carbon than terrestrial forests. But also our activity has been focused in our area of operation because that's where the mangroves exist today. But I think for us to make this movement more sustainable, maybe over the longer term, I think it has to be integrated into a larger ecosystem. The outlook has to be global. And I was also very happy to see the COP27 Mangrove Alliance for Climate, where India is now a signatory. I think that's going to be, very important for India, especially given the fact that we have such a vast coastline, and the importance of mangrove forests, not only for, for sequestering carbon, also for preventing floods, for livelihood. So I think, this whole sort of ecosystem, how we look and how we value ecosystem services, I think it goes beyond our boundaries or, where we operate. So I think in that sense, giving back has taken on a different form today.
Yeah, thanks, Nairika. No, absolutely, and I also, congratulations, you've turned 125 this year. Not you, obviously. Sorry. And I was reading an excerpt from your release, where you talk about how how you let me actually read it. In shaping India as a nation, Go Digital Voice has played a pioneering role in creating innovative and innovative products and nurturing trusted relationships. But as a company, you say you are reinvigorating yourself now to build products and services that are not only relevant, but positively impact the planet through technology that is clean, right? And one of the examples that we've showcased in the report is also the work that you're doing around the construction. Speaking of climate, right? I believe in the US at least, construction waste is 50% of all solid waste. That's a huge problem. And you have developed a very interesting approach, like a social entrepreneurship approach to address it. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think what is important, I think, to make sustainability effective, and obviously we're not there yet, but something that we're working on, is looking at a hybrid metrics, because you have sustainability on one end where you're measuring your company's ability to be sustainable, and then on a very different scale you're measuring business performance. So I think trying to integrate the two into having hybrid metrics, it needs to be holistic, and it shouldn't be looked on as separate. So that's something that we are working on. And in terms of the example of construction, I think that was it is a huge problem in India and globally, and the construction industry accounts for approximately 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So the idea was, how do we really turn that into an opportunity? Since we've been in the construction business for 75 years, how do we make this more sustainable? So the idea was to look at basically construction debris and use that waste to make a product that could then be once again used in infrastructure projects. But I think the roadblock really, and it's not something that can be done only by private industry, because I think that's sort of maybe a root of the problem. Maybe the private industry can start it, and of course you have scalable models, etc. But I think the real advantage comes when you have government involvement, at least government agencies, for instance, like ESL, that have been able to really incentivize behavior. For example, even appliances we have an appliance business, and appliances today contribute, again, a significant pollutant to the world today. But how do we look at, we have 5-star ACs, but no adoption, especially in India, because it's too expensive. So how do we really make it affordable? So in the similar way, we need to work with agencies like ESL, other government bodies, to really make it affordable. I think that's the first step. And specifically for construction, I think the codes today, the government codes are very strict. And today recycled concrete is not really accepted as something which, in a manner of speaking, is not legal because the codes don't permit it. And to change those codes is a lengthy process. So it takes a lot of also investment from the government side to actually ensure that it's scalable. And although we've been able to deploy it in the metro project and the coastal road project, which I think is a great start, and we had to use those examples as use cases to really get some traction to change the codes, where then it could be used for buildings, it could be used more in a wide scale manner. And I think also importantly, the ecosystem of suppliers. How do we really have a consistent ecosystem of supply? We don't have any shortage of construction debris, but there's no organized way in which today we are able to get it. So I think that whole infrastructure needs to be developed. And I think also in terms of, how do we also scale it? Because, we could be doing it at one end, but how do we really increase adoption? And I think that can, you can undertake different ways. Maybe you license it out, maybe you have more players doing that, because then I think then it becomes a really scalable model. So today, I think those are some of the shortcomings in terms of scalability, acceptability, and making it mainstream. And I think those are, we need to be doing much more to really have more of a mainstream presence and for it to be effective.
Beautiful. So what I'm hearing is also that these models, creating these models, they're not easy, right? You're really creating an entire ecosystem for something that doesn't exist. And you're having to think about so many additional things that you wouldn't have to do if you were just focusing on business as usual. So Narika, why do you still go ahead and do this?
Because it's important. I think it's important for the country. It's important for the world. And I think we don't really have much of a choice. I mean, maybe earlier there was a choice. I think now there really isn't a choice. And I think it's important for us all to figure out ways in which, and also I think internalize on our own industries, because, whether you take furniture, whether you take appliances, those are all very polluting industries. And, what can we do other than maybe greening our processes? We need to do more to ensure that our products are green. And to do that, I think, it needs to be a concerted effort, and we need to look at it as a non-negotiable.
Makes me very, very happy to hear somebody like you saying this. I think it bodes well for the future. And also it kind of links back to Shankar's point about, in a sense, for the business as usual, or business as a whole, that social contract that it had with society is changing, or it was broken, and it kind of needs to be mended. Really people need to start doing something different in order to, or create a new social contract. And purpose, I think, is something that is really something that creates that impetus to make that big step, even when it's not easy to do. Which is the perfect segue into my next question to Jayant. Jayant, you were the first chief mission officer ever in an MNC. And when I spoke to you a couple of days ago, you were talking about that entire journey of creating SLR iMitra, and how that only happens when there is purpose embedded in when it's driven by the company's original purpose. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey? What was it like, and how did you make the case internally?
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Aarti and Rahul, for organizing this fascinating panel. I'm very honored to be with all these esteemed panelists, so it's great to connect with you guys. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, just to give you a bit of the context for people who don't know SLR or the eye care industry, SLR is a French organization which recently merged with another Italian company called Luxottica. But at that time, SLR used to be primarily a pure player in the spectacle lenses field. It was globally the largest company in the world, highly profitable, part of the French stock index of CAC 40, employee-owned primarily, and it was one of the stars of the stock market. So it was, all things were going very well. So in 2012, when we created a new position as the chief mission officer, and I took it, working with the CEO and the board directly, the challenge before us was that while we were the leader, 1/3 of the world, which is 2.5 billion people, couldn't see well simply because they didn't have eyeglasses. And that had a huge socioeconomic impact. It was estimated that the world was losing about $273 billion every year just because people are not able to see well because they didn't have glasses. Simply said, you put glasses on people's noses, you could increase the GDP of the world by $273 billion. So that was quite shocking. And then we saw that as a responsibility as well as an opportunity. Why? Because we had set ourselves a mission for improving lives of everyone in the world by the vision, and in effect, bringing vision for everyone everywhere. So when we looked back and did some soul searching, we said we are leaders, right? But we are not doing the job of bringing vision for everyone everywhere. We're making a very good job with the limited market that we have got and making a lot of money. And that's when we said, what do we need to do to address the 2.5 billion people? We went back to the drawing boards. The answer was quite simple, and all of us believed at that point of time that the answer was not philanthropy. Yes, philanthropy was needed, probably for about 15 to 20% of them, or even lesser, for really people living below $2 a day, and you needed some solutions for that. But then you needed financially sustainable business models to solve this problem, if at all you could solve the problem. And we had a vision that we wanted to solve this problem within a lifetime, within a generation. So before we died, so we wanted to make sure the last man standing was wearing glasses. So that was really the objective. And we said we could do it over a 30-year time frame, considering the lifespan nowadays. So we could probably live that long to see. So that was the objective. And that's when we said we need to find business solutions. What we did was we went back to the drawing board. We set up an innovation lab here in Singapore with the support of the Singaporean government, called the BOP Innovation Lab. And we said, what does it take? Why are people not wearing glasses? The answers were quite straightforward. There's a problem of access. There were not enough access points. And of course, you needed professionals to measure your eye prescription. It's not an off-the-counter product. So there was a limitation there. The problem of awareness, because people didn't know that they had poor eyesight, because unlike a toothache or something like that, this one is not painful. You learn to live with it, and probably you think that that's the way the world is. And it's until you start seeing the world sharply. That was the second problem. And the third problem was obviously affordability. And for some of you, maybe a surprising figure, a cost of eyeglass anywhere in the world should be probably equal to 3 to 4 days of your salary. You can do the math, that's what it will be, whether you're in New York City or whether you're in a very small village in Madurai. So we said that, okay, the guy is earning $2 a day, responsibility is to make a new pair of eyeglasses at about $6 a day. If it's 5, we should do it about 15. So on average, we said we need to get it about $10. So there was a lot of reverse engineering we went into to create a product, looked at the cost of my goods, looked at the cost to serve, because that was the bigger cost, because cost to serve is always bigger than the cost to produce. Cutting a long story short, we did something, we came up with products with innovations, which could be sold at those prices. So we had the product, we could do a bit on awareness, but then we had this problem of creating access. When we said India was taking a lead in skill development those days, and I had, even now, and I have some friends who were running skill development organizations. And over a chance meeting, we said, why don't we create a barefoot optician? This was just a casual conversation over a coffee. And I said, yeah, let's do. What we tried as a small example became a big, big initiative. What we do now is to take young people from villages who are 12th class pass with science, 50% marks, when they go through a selection. Then they go to a training center, they get trained there for about 2 months, and then they get a 1-year hand-holding. We give them a grant of 25,000 rupees, help them to go back to the village and set up a micro enterprise called iMitra, which is the last mile connectivity where this gentleman is able to, or lady, is able to do a prescription eye care refraction and sell products. We've gone a step further in that in terms of now integrating technology with teleoptometry and getting it now prescriptions by WhatsApps, etc. But maybe that's for a later date. But basically, the problem was that there was access issue, and we went ahead and created this by empowering people, by giving them knowledge, by giving them a small amount of capital, and by sowing a seed of a dream of creating an enterprise rather than creating a job. Some numbers, right now, I think we are close to 10,000 iMitras in India alone. And it's gone around the world to Kenya, Indonesia, China, Bangladesh, all over the place. I think over 15,000 at this point of time. And making Essilor the largest rural optical network in the world, actually, and created the largest number of startups. So that has been one of the solutions which we did amongst many others in terms of trying to solve this problem with the power of business, with the knowledge of business and the talent behind the business people, not treating it as a foundations problem or a foundations issue, which we go and visit one day a year to do some good and do some field work, come back and do some postings on social media, but more so integrating it into our ethos and integrating into our business model. That's what we try to do.
Incredible. Did I hear you say 30-year horizon? How do you convince internally anyone to have a 30-year horizon in a world of quarterly reporting and quarterly targets?
Yeah, that's well, in order to convince them, we had to give them a vision, right? We had to give them a dream. So that was the first thing. So it was saying that the problem is solvable. So when you say the problem is solvable, half your battle is won, and you give them reasons why it's solvable. And then we look at the value creation which it brings to the business, right? Because when you look at it, you are first of all, you're creating access points with last mile connectivity, which no other competition has got. So that's a huge, huge, huge plus. The second thing is that we did a study which shows that, every time a person changes his eyeglasses, they spend up to a 40% premium because it's so good that, they want to buy better products, etc., even when they start off low. So very quickly, when they start at $5, they quickly graduate to at least the entry-level branded products, even in the villages, right? Because it happens like that. And then, of course, with the economic development, people are able to afford more and spend more. I must say that vision is like addiction, because once you get used to good vision, you can't get out of it. You just need to get more and more better vision. So we use that. It's addiction. It's good, and it's good for them, and they end up spending more, and they go up the economic ladder. So when that happens, you see, when they start buying your regular branded products, even the entry-level brands, you're actually creating new consumers. You're creating new markets for them, for the whole company. And what you're creating is a story of long-term, sustainable, organic growth for a company over a 30-year horizon. How many companies today can talk about a high single-digit organic growth globally for the next 30 years? So your valuation automatically goes up when you see that kind of thing. So there is something in it for everybody. So it depends upon, again, it's a little bit, what Rahul mentioned in the starting about communication and storytelling, I totally agree. There's a little bit of it on this as well. You need to look at your stakeholders of whom you're talking to and connect with them in the right parlance, in the right language, in terms of what they would understand. And there is value for everybody. And that's how you kind of try and sell the story, and it's not yet done. You've got to keep on working on it as you go along.
Super inspiring. Thank you. Kedar, let me turn to you. So HUL doesn't even have a CSR department, right? And yet Shakti, the Shakti project has come out of HUL. It's scaled. It still exists after so many years. And there are several others, like one on the circular economy that you've incubated. So tell us how that happens. So there is no one that holds, in a sense, social or environmental, within the organization, but yet at the same time, you manage to create something like Project Shakti. How does that happen?
Thanks, Aarti. I'll answer that. But first of all, I must say thank you to all the panelists, because I'm learning and I'm enjoying this conversation. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk to them about a few questions we might have. See, I strongly believe, Aarti and everyone else, that the time for CSR is actually over. And this is the time for, as I call as SRC, which is socially responsible corporates. And that's where Shankar's social contract really comes into play. And you spoke about the trust, the ability to make a difference, and the sustainable business practices is where it comes in. Now, if you have a dedicated CSR department, what happens? People believe that their job is to do business, and it is somebody else's job to do corporate social responsibility. But if you ask me, every brand manager, every general manager who must run business got to do it in a responsible, sustainable manner. And when you do that, possibly everyone has this subconscious understanding of the impact that he or she is making to the environment or the community or the society. Now, the desire to grow business while reducing the environmental impact, and we heard some of those stories, or doing it in a sustainable manner, is what today is called responsible capitalism. Now, we just spoke about purpose, and Unilever has been on this journey of compass strategy or sustainable living plan that we called out, where we said that, listen, our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. It was driven by three strong beliefs: that a brand with purpose grows, a people with purpose thrive, and a company with purpose or corporate with purpose lasts. Now, you spoke about Shakti. It does take a lot of time to build models such as Shakti, which is a great example of doing well by doing good. Now, the philosophy that we have had is, what is good for India is good for HUL, something that, Narika spoke about for 125 years. And it was a great plan of conceiving a rural reach idea, which could bring these products to deep rural while also empowering the micro entrepreneurs who were women in rural setup. Now, when women get educated and when they get funding, right, or financial freedom, it helps not just the family, but the whole society. It gives them amazing amount of say in how their lives are driven. And these rural promoters who work with these women over a period of time have made a big difference. So your slide spoke about 120,000 Shakti Ammas. I was with the Shakti team today because we were doing a Shakti summit in the office to plan for next year. And the latest numbers that we'll be announcing soon is close to 195,000 now across 151,000 villages. So it's a sustainable model which grows. And the thing is, there's a fine balance, and that balance has to be strike right between how you do business versus what you do for the larger stakeholders that you've got. So that's what happens. And if I were to just conclude by saying that if you were to think about a performance management framework, we keep talking about the 4G growth in Unilever. Now, what is 4G growth? It's very simple, but it is consistent growth. It is about profitable growth. It is competitive growth. And of course, it is responsible growth. So every year when we publish our business performance assessment, it's around this 4G growth model. And the question is simple. While delivering the first three, have you ensured the sustainability of the business was also delivered? If not, then your delivery is not holistic. And hence you don't need a dedicated department because everyone who works is aware of what they're responsible for.
One of the things that we heard in our research was that the role of the CEO is extremely important, right, in driving this. And we've heard that in this conversation too. But at Unilever, you managed to do something very interesting. You managed to create a top-down impetus for these sort of initiatives while also creating a lot of spaces for innovation, bottom-up in innovation, experimentation. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
Yeah, you're right. Indeed, the top leadership plays a really big role. And if it does help, if one himself or herself has gone through those experiences while shaping up one's career. So I ran Shakti as a general manager about 12 years ago when we had only 45,000 Shakti Ammas. But these organizational culture get built over a long period of time with repeated experiences, practices, reinforcements, leadership role modeling, and so on. And the desired culture that you want to see and being taken forward is by those people of character. Now, I want to take a cue here from what we do when we have our kids growing up. What do? We tell them stories of maybe Panchatantra or Indian fables or folklores or whatever else you believe is worth following in your life. And these stories have the ingredients for character building. So if you ask me, if you want to build character, organizational character, tell people good stories and make sure that these stories are told as often as possible. And Shakti Amma becomes one of that story, which is told not just often when we get our fresh recruits or business graduates or laterals, but also by ensuring that they work in these locations. And the number of other examples that you have spoken about, I think my mind went to an idea of business leaders or leaders for that matter. And entrepreneurs are the ones who expand their circle of influence, while managers are worried about circle of concern. And when you allow people to live their purpose, they look at these problems and expand their circle of influence. And while doing that, they use the organizational stature, capability, and wherewithal to make that difference. And that's what we've seen. And allowing people to take a +1 goal every year to learn something new or to make a difference is what has allowed us to get this large number of ideas, which then get incubated, get supported, get funded, and then get scaled up, which looks beautiful, of course, in external world, but also in our core businesses. Because if you ask me, the business case for sustainability is great, and we've proven this. Our brands with purpose grow faster. Yeah, 3/4 of our delta comes from brands where we've identified a purpose. The second is more trust. Employees who join this company, and we are one of the most favored organizations for young graduates. We are #1 in 50 companies. People can live their lives with respect, dignity, and success in an environment where they want to work. And that's where the trust comes from. Less risk, because we've been talking about sustainable sourcing of palm oil or tomatoes or agricultural products. We know that it reduces the volatility of our supply chains, because we know multiple sources which are sustainable where we are going to get our products from. And lower costs, because if you keep chasing the idea of how do you reduce environmental impact, you know what, your costs don't go up. Because I've seen numbers in the last 10 years, we've reduced the cost of operations in our factories by over €1 billion. So that's the business case for sustainability. And hence, when you see it around you, is when you start thinking about it and your culture gets built.
Beautiful. So I know we're running out of time. One final question that I want to throw open to everyone here is that I'm very glad that all of you have been saying that what's good for society is good for business. That's what I'm hearing again and again. I don't know whether it's my bias, because that's what I want to hear. But that is what I've been hearing. Now, that also sounds a little bit, I'm sure some people in the audience are thinking, but that sounds a little bit also unrealistic, in the sense that there is the corporate immune system at the end of the day that Rahul talked about, and it does push back against, trying to create initiatives like this that have a 30-year time horizon, or that are, not hugely financially successful immediately. We've seen part of the corporate immune system is also investors, right? So we've seen investor backlash globally against large MNCs like Danone, for example, where Emmanuel Faber was ousted for sacrificing what they felt was sacrificing profitability for social good, at least in the short term. So how do you address this? How do you navigate this corporate immune system to be able to do initiatives like this? Open to everyone. Jayant?
Yeah, maybe I go first. I think there are a few things here. I mean, there's one thing is to discover your true purpose. Essilor was a 170-year company, and we went ahead the journey of discovering our purpose after that. And then that helped us to kind of align, you know where you are heading. So once your purpose is clear, it makes it easy to get your corporate immune system to support it. There is also a value creation angle. And I think most times, and I must say that, especially in the charity, in the philanthropic world, or in the other world, we tend to believe that we are do-gooders. We're the only ones doing good. We just need money. If you have the money, we'll change the world. Well, it's not that easy. I mean, we also have responsibilities. We need to have proper measurements, parameters, value creation indices, explaining to people that how responsible we are and what we do. I think that's the second thing. The third thing, I'm going to say something probably a bit controversial, but I'll anyway say it. You need the CEO and the founders to actually help to open the doors and to kind of start doing it. But the challenge is that as soon as some door is opened, you need to find a way of making this a part of the system, or ingrain it into the company and make it so big that it cannot be closed down, or it cannot be, you sell the big dream or do whatever to get that happen. The reason why I'm saying this is that I've seen it personally. I've seen it in most companies as well. This thing is so powerful. If it's not done, it's done for the first time. Most CEOs tend to use it as their personal toy. as their personal asset, something which they have created, and they want to have a legacy left in their name because it's theirs, and they make it very personal to themselves, which is good as long as they are there. But the problem, what happens is if it's too closely associated with a CEO who's probably leaving and a new person comes in, he's searching for his own legacy. And then when you have something so closely associated with something with a previous CEO, there's a danger that it can actually go off track or go in a different direction. So the trick is that how do you use it to just open the door and then make it everyone's project, rather than keeping it very personal with a CEO who may be very good, very committed, and I'm not taking names; they were quite obvious. But it's just that, you know, I mean, that's the key job of a social entrepreneur as well, not to play into the hands of that, because we are not working for individuals, or we're not working for we are working for the cause, and we are trying the best way to do it. And as business people, we will use the best possible mechanisms, whichever it is. So I think that's one point which I just wanted to bring it up and say. Like I said, it could be a bit provocative, but yeah, that is true. And I think that's been my experience, I would say.
So if I can just make two quick ones, Aarti, to your question. So I think, you know, in a business environment, we need to understand that that businesses will, at the end of the day, talk about return on investment. So the important thing to underline, and that's what I found very something that eases the way, is to explain to companies when I was in the group that, especially the CFOs, right, because they are the ones whose role is to make sure that the money is being spent well, is to make the distinction between the short term and the long term. In the short term, everything is a cost. In the long term, everything can be an investment. So if you have to talk the investment and return of investment language, and it is usually very easy to do. Kedar talked about how the business case in so many ways. You can actually, in many ways, put that in terms of rupees and paise and still come up with the fact that you get payback periods of less than 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 6 months, and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to pitch it right in that way. But I think the other very enabling part, and I think that would be true for all the companies present in the room, is the culture in the organization, and that's so important. I mean, we had 100 companies in the group. I used to deal with CEOs obviously very often because I needed to get the companies to work on certain things. It was never a question. Nobody ever asked the question, why are we doing this? It was only about, okay, when can we do it? What can we do? How does it fit in with my business? That was the question. It was never about why. Moment somebody asks why, you're sort of, you're going to change tax and then, get into a different sort of conversation. So I think the culture of the organization, the culture of the group makes a lot of difference. And then you get that buy-in. But then you have to pitch it as something that makes business sense. Otherwise, it's going to always end up with, the danger of it falling off the table into the CSR space, which is never very helpful. So I'll stop there. Those are my 2 bits from my experience.
Yeah, thanks for that. Maybe before Narika goes with her opinion, I want to say something, which is, see, it's very important to strike that delicate balance between different priorities of business. Without that, it can't be done. Because today, business is a multi-stakeholder model. There are shareholders who are looking for profits and increasing profits. There are consumers whose needs you have to serve. There are customers through which you go to your consumers and shoppers. There are employees who want to work for you and deliver great results. There are communities in which you operate and the society at large. Now, the business will have to be growing in order to be able to do justice to these expectations from diverse stakeholders. And that's the trapeze artist who comes into place. And if you cannot grow your business, you will find it very difficult to do good. And that's what Shankar said. Tata Sampann today is a great brand. It's consumed in our homes. But if it didn't do well, he wouldn't have been here to tell that story, right? And so we got to strike that balance and then go full steam ahead.
I think before Narika comes in, I just want to say, we need to have another conversation, another panel about growth also, because I think that's also an issue, right? How can you endlessly grow? But that's for another discussion. Narika, over to you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there has to, I think the basis of it has to be a business case. And I think that's the only way that it can be sustainable. But I completely agree that there has to also be something that's driving it, which is larger than just profit. And, that purpose has to permeate the organization, and maybe it's the driver. But the business case has to be sustained. And I think a lot has to also be done in terms of preferences and shaping preferences. I think that's also a big responsibility of business, that today, in terms of awareness building, in terms of understanding, also simple things like total cost of ownership. How do we look at that, in a different way, where it actually becomes beneficial and you're not just thinking of an upfront payment? And I think things like that, in terms of shaping preferences, I think companies have a very strong role to play.
Super. I love that point also about business shaping consumers, right? It's not just the other way around, but business also playing that active role. That's a super point. This has been such an incredibly interesting discussion. We could talk for another 2 hours, but if the panelists can stay for another 5 minutes, if we can just pick up a couple of questions from the audience. I know Rahul's been collecting them. Rahul?
Yeah, so I'd requested the audience to write up the questions in the chat box, but if other than these, if somebody has any questions that just occurred, please raise your hands using the raise hand icon, and we will take up your question. In the meanwhile, I'll read up what there is on the chat box. So I think one of the questions is that as business leaders, do you find evidence from rigorous research compelling to prove the business case for a social intervention? Would investing in the proving of the said business case be a priority for you? Right. This question is from Betamahi from Good Business Lab. Anybody wants to go for this?
Well, if I can just, maybe I'll just give it a shot. So I think while the business case is important, one shouldn't be a victim to trying to build that case. What I'm trying to say is that there are many benefits that are often very difficult to monetize. So assumptions have to be made, and therefore you can create that business case. So for example, I talked about Titan and the Karigar parks. Now, it's intuitively this makes business sense, because you have a supply chain, you have goldsmiths who are producing it. They're producing it in terrible conditions. They have a life expectancy in their early 30s. So if you create an environment where they can do that better, with better climate control, with better control of effluents and everything else, productivity will go up, quality will go up. Now, some of these are not always very easy to put numbers. So your business case doesn't necessarily have to be purely financial. So one has to understand this, that business case is a combination of financial and pretty obvious non-financial benefits, which put together CEOs understand that this makes sense and we should go ahead with doing it. So I would just want to underline that point to this question.
Thank you. Thank you. The other question is that, do you feel the need for a global platform? Do you feel the need for a global platform working group for SIs, innovators, and other stakeholders in the healthcare domain to solve the domain challenges through solution providers? So this question is from Dr. Sameer Kumar, is a health practitioner. And
Maybe one for Jayant, since it's.
Yeah. I'll probably take that. Yes, I would say yes, absolutely. There is a need for getting people together because like when we go and create platforms for primary eye care, primary healthcare can be very easily integrated into those access points, right? When you have access points, you're doing eye care, you can do simple healthcare interventions as well. And there'll be a lot of knowledge sharing which can happen in those platforms, a lot of knowledge sharing and sharing of technology platforms as well in terms of medical diagnostics and using AI and things, which is happening in the eye care world, but it can happen in the broader healthcare world. So the short answer is yes. I mean, there's a definite need. And also, I think there are organizations like the YSB, which is a common platform for all the social entrepreneurs. Maybe there could be a subsect inside that platform with healthcare focus. I'm just saying that, which could be easy. Instead of duplicating platforms, we could create subsets within existing platforms, but get people together to exchange ideas and knowledge and whatever that you can. But yes, I mean, and I would definitely support it from my side.
I think I know the panelists probably need to go on because we'd asked them to be here till 5 o'clock. So maybe we can close this now. But just to say a huge thank you first to all of them for this incredible discussion. My mind is buzzing. I'm leaving feeling very inspired. I hope everyone who's been listening in has been too. Thank you so much for your time and for all of the work that you're doing. And yes, just thank you. Nothing else to say.
Yeah.
And with that,
I'd also like to invite Shloka.
Yeah.
She's the acting CEO of Indian Climate Collaborative and chair of IMC YLF. Shloka, if you could close us out, please.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for such a brilliant conversation. I got to be a fly on the wall, and I think it was, as Aarti said, just incredibly inspiring, but also I think really cogent and really relevant given what's happening today, of course, with COP27 in the background. So thank you to Aarti and the YSC team for organizing this really relevant and sort of, I think, one of the few conversations that I've really had the privilege of sort of listening into that has not just sort of very clear examples of what everyone, has actually been working on, but also I think some very relevant ideas about what we can do to sort of move things even further. And of course, as I mentioned, COP27 is right now a make or break moment for global action on climate change, and the world is not on track to keep warming within 1.5 degrees. I think the events of the past year have made that path to success even more difficult. We've seen the continuing economic effects of COVID-19. We have Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And of course, the mounting impacts of climate change in the form of various disasters. And I think that's created really tremendous stumbling blocks for decarbonization as well as international cooperation on climate. So today's conversation, I think, couldn't be more important because for a long time as a nation, we believed here in India that climate action and ecological protection was secondary to our development. And I think that's because we followed a model of development that we had really inherited. But today, of course, we're faced with a different challenge altogether. It's no longer straightforward to divorce social progress from environmental sustainability. I think that's something our panelists have all echoed. Continually along our business as usual trajectory is actually really endangering the very people that we aim to uplift. And Nairika mentioned, we don't have a choice, and she's absolutely right. We really don't. I think Kedar made a brilliant case for a brilliant business case for sustainability. I think that was a very cogent argument. And the fallouts of environmental degradation, whether it's devastating floods or polluted natural resources, they always hit our vulnerable populations the hardest. And so we really do have to ask ourselves whether business in India will continue to enjoy the access to natural resources that they have today. And as we climb up that income ladder and we consume more resources, we really need to manage our resource consumption if we're going to make that path the one that we're on, a very sustainable one. And I think in that sense, businesses have a very important role to play because We've traditionally focused on financial performance, on corporate governance to really mitigate risk and to assess the potential for long-term value creation, but that's actually no longer enough. Today, we have a fiduciary duty to the community at large. Today, social and environmental concerns are at least as important as financial performance and governance. And our twin fiduciary duties to our investors and to the larger community are best served by not maximizing short-term profitability, but by concentrating on returns and risks over the long term. And that's got to be the shift. So thank you to our panelists. You are all exceptional. Thank you to our audience. I want to say a big thank you to the IMC, to the UNIS Social Business Team, to BMW Foundation, the IMC Young Leaders Forum, and of course, the organizing team, Aarti, the powerhouse that she is, Rahul, Smriti, Richa, Urvashi, Anita Naik, of course, and the amazing tech team. Thank you to everyone for putting this event together today.